Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Howdy, friends, and welcome to the Ted Lasso Recap Podcast. I'm your host, Ray Taylor, and I'm thrilled to be here with y'all today. Now, folks, if you're like me, you can't get enough of Ted and the gang over at AFC Richmond, but that is why I am here. To dive deep into every episode of this wonderful show and share my thoughts and insights with you lovely folks out there. We're going to laugh, we're going to cry, and we're going to have a heck of a good time doing it. So grab your biscuits, settle in, and let's get started, shall we? With this episode, Season 3, Episode 8, We'll Never Have Paris. This episode aired May 3rd, 2023, directed by Erica Dunton. In this episode, Keeley is part of a massive leak of sexual explicit photos from different celebrities and politicians. The way it's handled by Jack may shake things up with their relationship. There's a lot of talk about the privacy and best practices in regards to having pics and videos of past loves that may have sent them to you. What is the best practices in dealing with those? Henry, Ted's son, is hanging out with Ted and the team while Ted stresses out about his ex going on a last-minute surprise trip to Paris with Dr. Jacob. My predictions with Nate are still on track as his relationship with Jade continues to grow. So much of the real Nate is coming out instead of the asshole Nate that was a big part of last season and a big part of his arc of the last season. And speaking of coming out, another player finds out Colin's secret. And another episode that had a moment that really got me choked up. And it was a moment that, not overly emotional moment necessarily, but it got me choked up. We'll get into that when that moment occurs as I break down this episode of Ted Lasso, which starts with a montage of AFC Richmond on a winning streak. The last episode, they figured out how to utilize total football. Jamie Tart taking his stance as the number one player of the team, figuring out the best way to utilize this new strategy, and they are on a winning streak. So we're having a montage, seeing Rebecca and Higgins and Keeley at the stadium cheering on a win. You have the fans at the pub, the bartender May at the pub cheering on a win. You get a shot of Rupert angry at his desk with a win. Right, you have the pundits talking about their 4 straight wins. Talking about what's up with the win streak, and ends with Ted sitting across from his ex and Dr. Jacob, who are visiting. It's a very awkward moment. Ted finds out that Jake, aka Dr. Jacob, is taking his ex to Paris. He surprised her on the plane ride over. Henry, meanwhile, is playing some pinball. And it seems like Paris may have been, like in the moment, the way Ted kind of reacts to the information, seems like may have been a place that he and his ex had talked about going themselves. But of course, Ted trying to stay positive about this news, trying to put on a positive face. But it's still kind of, you can see the pain in his eyes, in his face, just another, it's kind of been a rough, I guess last season was a little bit rough for Ted. It's kind of been rough for Ted in this season. He has been very detached from a lot of the soccer aspects, the football aspects of this show, and really been distracted with his ex-wife and her seemingly new relationship with their former couples therapist. Cut to Jack and Keeley waking up in bed together. Jack's uncle, quote-unquote Uncle Bernie, invites her to a charity polo event, and Jack invites Keeley to this event as well. right? Jack wants to show off her new girlfriend, right, to everybody. And it turns out that this Bernie, this Uncle Bernie, is actually Bernard Arnault, who runs Moet and Louis Vuitton, right? Don't have no idea what Moet is. Don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Louis Vuitton, obviously, high fashion brand. Like, he's just Uncle Bernie to Jack, but of course he is this massive mogul in the fashion. And Keeley, obviously highly stoked. She asks if Uncle Bernie is looking for a new niece, right? And then Keeley gets this notification on her phone that really elicits a very negative response from Keeley. She is not happy with whatever this notification was. And then cut to Nate in bed with Jade as he's scrolling through his phone as she's still sleeping. And social media, looking at news articles about how Richmond is on the rise. Jade wakes up, and she notices that Nate had brushed his teeth, right, and that he has shaved already. Asked if he, got up to shave and brush his teeth and then go back to bed. He's like, yeah, I kind of did that, right? And he also adds that he also showered and used the toilet at the neighbor's flat, right? So he going out of his way to present himself in the best way for when she wakes up. And I can sympathize. I can sympathize with Nate in this. I sympathize with Nate in a lot of ways in this episode. Maybe that has something to do with what got me choked up. He wants to know, Nate trying to figure out what their status is, right? If they're boyfriend and girlfriend, right? But very awkward about, obviously he's not just going to come right out and ask. He's kind of trying to play it off, trying to be cool. Very pitiful. But also, another thing I can relate to, not knowing where I stand with this person that I really like, but does she really like me? I would love to be in kind of an exclusive relationship. Is that what she wants out of this? So I sympathize with Nate trying to get that type of information that can be tricky to... You can't necessarily just ask out in the blue, because even the question could potentially push somebody away, especially if they're not necessarily ready to put that label on the situation, at least as much as you are. So it's a tricky situation because you don't want to come on too strong, right? But you want to know. It's just like there's a level of comfort at least knowing and not questioning where you stand. But the way he does it kind of makes it seem like he's okay with it being casual, right? And she's kind of fine with it. Also like she has like zero, like, she's very stone-faced in times. It's very hard to read Jade in moments. Like, she's usually pretty stoic and stone-faced, aside from, like, there's just a couple moments where she actually showed joy or any kind of emotion necessarily. So, not in addition to Nate trying to find out what her thoughts are, it's hard to read her body language as well because of how she kind of presents herself in the stoic fashion that she does, right? Not really showing what's going on under the noggin there. But then we cut back to Keeley and Jack, and we find out why Keeley is upset, right? There was this massive leak. There's a private video of her that she had sent to somebody she was dating, right? And pics of her. And other celebrities as well, and politicians, right? So it's one of those, they've happened, the fappening, right? Celebrities, politicians, the cloud gets leaked, right? Emails get leaked, all hacked, all these things. It happens, right? And she's a celebrity in a lot of ways, before model, actress, doing these things, now she's running a business, and she's part of this. And you kind of see part of the video, right? Doesn't really show anything, obviously. Ted Lasso, not the most sexually explicit TV show on the air, But, we kind of get the idea. And she's freaking out. Jack kind of tries to calm her down, help her. She's supportive. And Jack says she's going to take care of it, right? Supportive, on her side, going to try and help out, right? Maybe use her connections, whatever, see what she can do. Cut to Will, the kit man, going over his duties with Henry, who I didn't even, like, when this scene showed up, I'm like, who is this kid? I thought it was just Will hanging out with this kid who's like, this kid is helping Will out. Completely forgot that, of course, Henry was in this episode, obviously, playing pinball in the first, and his name is Henry. Why am I thinking his name is something else? Let me double check real quick, because it's going to be real quick. It's going to show up, Henry. But obviously, like, the second time I saw this kid, a.k.a. Henry, show up in the episode, it's like, oh, yeah, duh. He's hanging out with, well, he's not hanging out with his dad. His dad's at work, so Henry's hanging out with the other piece, hanging out with the kit man. He's helping out Will. And Will turns it into, like, this competition, this game. It's like, okay, we got these towels. How fast are you going to be able to sort these towels and put them at the lockers, right? And you see Ted and Beard and Roy and Trent all watching, spectating this situation from inside their office that's attached to the locker room, right? And they comment on the use of child labor as a form of, competition, right? To kind of disguise this kind of child labor that's going on as some playful game. Which is, just to step out into reality a bit, it's kind of sad that in America there are places where child labor is on the rise. They're bringing child labor back to the good old US of A, rolling the clocks back to the industrial age when just we had kids doing dangerous jobs, and it doesn't matter. Who cares about education? Not that that's kind of a serious situation. Definitely a fun time for Henry to be hanging out and helping out. And then you have Ted. They kind of turn away from the window, and Ted asks the guys about where they would propose to someone, right? Where would it be if you were going to propose to your loved, the person you want to marry? Where would you do it, right? Roy and Trent instantly say Paris, and of course Beard has a very obscure choice. He says the Hall of Mirrors at Lenderhof Palace in Germany. So she says yes, I would be surrounded by yeses, and then he said or Paris. Right? Because Ted thinks Dr. Jacob is going to propose to his ex. Roy asks if Ted wants to talk about it, which is kind of interesting for Roy to offer that. Of course, Ted does. And Beard calls the Diamond Dogs into action, which, of course, pushes Roy away, despite the fact that Roy took part in the Diamond Dogs in the last season when discussing his issues he was having with Keeley. He is back to being repelled anytime the Diamond Dogs are rallied together. So Trent has no idea what the Diamond Dogs. This is his first time seeing this Diamond Dog formation, kind of the Diamond Dog pack coming together. Beard kind of explains it to Trent. And he's in. And Roy's mad. Like, okay, fine. Of course you're in, right? And you see Higgins running, exhausted, showing up, completely winded, ran down the stairs, ran up some stairs to show up. And they all find out that Ted is assuming that Dr. Jacob is going to propose. Doesn't know for sure, but that's what he's assuming. And even Roy, who's pretending not to be listening in his office, but can still obviously listen, he calls BS. He's like, that's it. That's what you're basing this idea that he's going to propose on, is this assumption. And Trent points out, you shouldn't worry about something that hasn't happened yet, right? Higgins also pointing out, right, recommends, you should find out before you flip out, which is kind of a good phrase to live by, as Ted is one to adopt and utilize phrases, one-liners. Find out before you flip out is a great one. right? And Trent says, a trip to Paris doesn't automatically equal engagement. So Ted kind of, at least his worries a little bit curtailed at the moment. Cut to Nate, who is in his office now. He's having a meeting, right? You have one guy sitting on the couch. You don't know who this guy is. Another guy shows up. Don't know who either of them are. One kind of looks like a nerdy guy. The other guy kind of looks like he's a coach or something like that, right? And Nate's waiting on the third guy, who is, we find out, the third guy he's waiting on is Rupert for this meeting that Nate is calling in his office. Nate calls Rupert, gets his assistant, finds out Rupert's not coming. She just hangs up on Nate. And of course, Rupert's... What does Nate think he is, that he's going to get Rupert to go to his office when he asks him? Rupert isn't waiting around to come anytime Nate summons him. That is not the type of person Rupert is, right? And it's not because Rupert's busy, right? He's just not. There's no way he's going to Nate's office, right? Not at all surprising. And we find out that Nate is trying to start his own Diamond Dogs. And he's trying to call it the Love Hounds. And it's very sad. It's very awkward. And it's like, it's just like clear that he misses that aspect of Richmond. Being a part of the Diamond Dogs was something that he appreciated and misses and could use, as we saw in the last episode, Nate trying to ask everyone from his mom, sister, and Siri what he should do. What information, how do you know if a girl likes you? How do you know if she's going to stand you up? All of these things, nobody has any help, which are all questions he would have easily been able to ask the Diamond Dogs and probably gotten more words of advice than, I don't know, you just don't know, right? At least they would try to provide some answers. And him trying to recreate that magic, the magic of the Diamond Dogs at West Ham with these fraudulent replacements of Diamond Dog members and trying to call them Love Hounds is just sad. Right? And one of the guys, the coach-looking guy is kind of like a Roy type. The other guy, kind of a Higgins type. So in many ways, he's trying to recreate that dynamic. And Nate's vibe is still his normal, sweet, awkward self, as opposed to evil Nate, right? We really see in this season that Nate is the only times he's showing evil Nate is when he's dealing with Rupert, right? Or he has to present. Oh my goodness, I shouldn't have said that name. The only time that's why I didn't say it in the last episode. I went out of my way not to say the name that triggers the devices in my studio to interrupt me recording. But the only time we see evil Nate is for Rupert. Everybody else that Nate interacts with in this season has been, aside from when he first walked in to West Ham in the first episode, it has been the normal, awkward, adorable, sweet Nate. The Nate that we all know and love. The Nate that existed before evil Nate came to be. And he's just desperate for advice. And he wants to know how to go about finding out if Jade wants to be in a relationship with him. And this Roy type guy named Disco, which is a crazy name, said that he's been married 3 times, and his advice is to never let them know your feelings. It gets too expensive. The Higgins type, whose name is Roger, recommends insulting her, right? Okay, that's both horrible advice from these guys. Nate, realizing, thankfully, it is bad advice, immediately cancels the meeting and immediately disbands the Love Hounds. The Love Hounds have come and gone faster than anything in this show has ever existed in the show, right? And it's just another show. This Nate wants longing for the Diamond Dogs, right? All that's needed is the inevitable rejection from Rupert that will push Nate back to Richmond, right? Nate, clearly we've seen he wants to smooth things over with Ted, right? Hasn't had the opportunity, wants to do that. The only thing that's keeping him there, and the only time we see Nate as evil Nate, is when it comes to Rupert. And we've already seen how Rupert has flip-flopped, has rejected Nate when he's not winning. So, I'm telling you, there's going to be a moment in the next few episodes, because there's not that many episodes left, 4 episodes left, 3 episodes left, I guess. Nate is going to disappoint Rupert. Rupert's going to reject him. And Nate is going to, at the same time, kind of smooth things over with Ted. And he will be back at Richmond. This is Henry's prophecy via Lego in the opening of this season. It will happen. The prophecy of Henry, the Lego prophecy of Henry, will come to fruition. And Nate will have his redemption story. He will be back at Richmond, along with Keeley. Everybody that was lined up in Lego will be lined up on the sideline at Richmond when they win and get the trophy. Cut to the next morning. Ted drops off, still dropping off his daily biscuits to Rebecca, right? Still baking them at home, still chopping them up and taking them to Rebecca every morning, right? This guy never quits, unlike his dad. He never quits. And Ted asks her for her help, right? And she asks about, how the training's going, right? And he's like, it's because he's not down there training with the team. And Ted's like, don't worry, I got somebody covering it. Cut to, we see Henry kind of kicking a ball up in the air, trying to keep the ball up in the air as the entire team is like watching him and cheering him on, right? So they're doing their own thing. And Ted wants to hire a private investigator to spy on his ex and Dr. Jacob. Rebecca points out all of the reasons people go to Paris that are not to propose. And then Ted asks where Rupert proposed. And of course, he proposed in, she doesn't want to answer, but of course, Paris was the answer. Right, and she refers to, I love this moment, she refers to the Eiffel Tower as a lamppost with a publicist, and I believe she was referring to the Mona Lisa as an overrated painting, which I 100% agree with the Mona Lisa being an overrated painting. It's not a magical painting, but people act like it's a magical painting. It's an important painting because people said it's an important painting for no other reason. There is no other reason the Mona Lisa is as valued and worshipped other than people just saying it is. It is not some technical achievement in art. It is not some creative achievement in art. It is a painting that somebody, well after the artist was dead, said was a very valuable thing, probably because they were in possession of it. And that is generally how art works. Things are expensive because somebody says they are and got other people to agree. So I agree. If she was referring to the Mona Lisa or any other painting, I would say overrated. Generally, it's a good kind of rule of thumb. Not to say they're not good. Not to say that art, especially different kinds of art, didn't progress things, didn't push the movement forward, aren't important in some way. But there is kind of this worship, this pedestal people put. The Mona Lisa is a very specific one, and it's kind of crazy to me. Anyway, Ted kind of gets emotional and begs her for her help, and she agrees to make a call. Right? Ted, he's wants confirmation, and he's not getting it from it. Everybody's trying to talk him out of this thing. And he's one track mind he wants to know. which I feel bad. Ted is so distracted by this whole thing. Cut to Keeley, lost in her laptop at her office, looking at all the comments, assumably on Reddit, of this leaked video that's out there of her. Barbara comes in and interrupts her, apologizes for what happened, and hands her a statement for her to post on her socials. And the statement is an apology, as if she did something wrong, right? Her apologizing that she ever made the video, and that it exists, right? As if somebody else didn't violate somebody by hacking and releasing something that was meant to be private, right? But her, in this statement, taking the blame for that, which is ridiculous, right? And it's in this moment, and the statement came from Jack, right? And it's in this moment where I'm like, oh, this is just the beginning of the end, which I think the relationship with Jack is doomed to fail, just because it's going to be the thing that pushes. It's going to be the thing that ends her business, this PR firm. It's going to be the thing, because I believe the prophecy of Henry and the Lego set, that Keeley, in addition to Nate, they will both be back at Richmond at the end of the season, at the end of the series. And this is going to be the inciting event. This event, which I had assumed it was going to be, her being jealous. I thought it was going to be her with these love bomb things. But it seems like this is the wedge that is coming between Keeley and Jack, this statement. So I think this is what's going to be the beginning of the end for them, right? Keeley, not necessarily ashamed for making the video. Obviously, very traumatized from the fact that it got released, but she's not somebody that feels ashamed of who she is and what she's done in the past, right? And it's another moment where I feel like Barbara is sympathizing with Keeley for once, right? At least it seems that way. I've been wrong about Barbara and Keeley. I thought they were going to start bonding when Keeley noticed all the snow globes. Nothing ever came of that. So who knows where Barbara's at with all of that. Wouldn't be surprised if they do bond and Barbara goes with Keeley to Richmond. Would not be surprised. However, this is something that I think, this is the wedge, this statement, which is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Let's take a quick break from this episode to talk about, are you a fan of art, movies, and all things entertainment? Then you need to check out youtube.com/inspireddisorder. Our page is jam-packed with all kinds of great content, including making of videos of the many faces, an ongoing art series of abstract ink paintings. But that's not all. We also feature daily episodes from The Ray Taylor Show, a podcast that brings you movie reviews, TV show reviews, episode recaps, opinions on news and entertainment, and much more. There's also a weekly diary and top 5 movie rankings of a variety of categories. And if that wasn't enough, we've also got how-to videos covering all kinds of topics. So why wait? Head on over to youtube.com/inspireddisorder and start exploring the amazing content we have to offer. And now, back to the show. In the locker room, cut to the locker room. AFC Richmond locker room. Van Dam, a.k.a. Zorro, is the first player to discover the leaked photos and videos, right? He's like, oh, shit, there's a big leak that happened, right? Colin makes a comment saying he knows what he's doing for the weekend, right? He's still trying to portray this misogynistic straight guy thing, this mask of who just to kind of keep people off his trail. Isaac tells Colin, right, that he shouldn't be looking at that stuff. Nobody should be looking at that stuff, right? One guy says, right, famous people should have known better than to take them, should have known better than to take the videos and pictures, right, if they didn't want them getting out. Which, sure, you should at some level, especially if you're famous. Even if you're not famous. Understanding the internet and the world, you have to understand that there is a potential for things to come out, especially digital things that can easily be copied. It's not like a Polaroid in a safe, right? It is a picture in a cloud. It is ones and zeros in a hard drive at some server farm that a company owns, right? It's in an email. It's in a text message. It's in a chat, social media DM, right? All of things that can be hacked, all things that have been hacked. So I do agree with there should be some accountability just on your own to understand the risks. But also, it wasn't intended, right? The people that hacked it, they're the ones at fault, right? Not the people that took the photos and videos, the people that hacked. And Jamie blames the people, obviously, that stole the pictures, that leaked the pictures, right? And he says he always deletes all of his photos and everything from his phone. Sam agrees, says after a relationship, he gives his phone to the woman and lets her delete whatever she wants off of his phone that she doesn't want him to have, right? Everybody else kind of thinks it's crazy. And they kind of all go over the possible exceptions to not deleting the photo. Right? Well, what if it's artistic photo? What if it's this type of photo? What if it's this type of thing? Will the kit man suggest, what if it's a commissioned painting? Right? And then Jamie's like, okay, what kind of frame is it in? And he's like, oh, it's actually just leaning up against the couch. And he's like, oh, you got to burn that, right? Kind of ridiculous. I do think it's an interesting conversation to have. What constitutes a picture that is meant for a different purpose, an artistic purpose, whatever. Also, it's an interesting thing to have. What do you do after a relationship? What do you do with pictures and videos people send you? Do you delete them when you stop talking to them? Do you delete them when you're no longer in a relationship? Do you delete them only when they ask you to delete them? Do you go do it yourself? Very interesting conversation to have. And the way I kind of think about it is, obviously, if somebody asks, I will delete. Sure. No problem with that. I, on some level, agree with Colin, who says they were given to you, so then they now belong to you. And you can decide to do with them whatever you want. Obviously, your intention should never be to put those out, to share them past yourself, right? They were intended for you, not intended for you to use or show to anybody else. But I agree that, like, if somebody sends you something, if I send somebody something, I mean, part of this, I know that, like, they might show it to somebody. They might show their friends. It's something that could potentially get leaked. Sure. But, I kind of agree with Colin on this in some ways. It's very difficult. It's very interesting. It's a new thing, I don't think I've ever been in a relationship where the person I was in a relationship with sent me sexy photos. Sadly. Not that I haven't received them, but it was never in a dynamic of relationship, right? So everybody's situation is different, and I would assume Keeley would probably agree on some level with Colin, right? I don't know. Like, I think Colin is probably the most gray area as far as what the right kind of thing to do in that situation would be, right? But I'm not the kind of guy, I don't share, I don't kiss and tell, never been that guy of like, oh, I go and tell my boys everything that I do. I don't talk about my sexual conquests or anything like that. I keep things private, so I'm not one to be sharing stuff. There are definitely dudes that will. There's definitely dudes that love to share stuff, that probably share whatever photos they're given. Look at this dude, right? I think that's kind of messed up. Like, it's a very interesting kind of a nuanced discussion, and both Jamie and Sam are like, get rid of it as soon as, and that's probably a good thing too, especially like if you're going to date somebody else. maybe you shouldn't have naked pictures and videos of your exes if you're with somebody new, right? There's probably that aspect to it as well, right? But yeah, Colin's kind of idea is stuff, I don't touch it, right? If it's my stuff, don't touch it, right? It's my stuff. They gave it to me, right? If somebody sends you a pic, it belongs to you, right? Unless they specifically ask you to delete it, right? And Sam is the first person to notice that Keeley is part of this hack, right? And in that moment, everybody in the locker room kind of freezes. Everybody's speechless, right? Because it's somebody they know. It completely changes the dynamic where they all have this realization of like, oh, that is fucked up that it got hacked, right? And because they are all famous as well, they are all targets for this potentially happening to them. So Isaac demands everybody to take out their phones, delete everything they have, right? Since they are literally close to this situation, right? And you see Roy, who's listening to this while he's like writing on the marker board, not jumping in, but when he hears it's Keeley, like he freaks out and he kind of walks away, walks into his office. Jamie kind of sees how Roy reacts in that moment. And my thoughts is like maybe this was a video that she sent to Roy, but I don't know. Nobody knows. And everybody kind of pulls out their phones. They start deleting their stuff. Jamie kind of looks over at Will, kind of surprised that he has stuff on his phone too, the Kit Man, that he has stuff to delete. And Colin kind of pretending, but then leaves. Like you see Jamie and Sam, who have already made their position known that they don't have anything to delete. They've already deleted everything. So they leave while everybody's still deleting stuff. And Colin kind of walks out shortly after them. Isaac notices that Colin just left without deleting his stuff. Isaac goes out. Colin's like goes out of the locker room and sits down at a couch like that's in a hallway. And Isaac goes over and grabs his phone. He's like, "You got to do this, man. This is serious." And Isaac looks at his phone, and then that's where Isaac realizes, like, oh, right? He realizes that Colin's gay. And it's hard to gauge Isaac's reaction. Like, he wasn't angry. It almost seems like it could have been that he was upset that Colin didn't feel comfortable being open with him about his sexual preference. It could be that he is maybe uncomfortable with the fact that Isaac is gay. Maybe. But nothing very explicit. It's hard to read Isaac in this moment. But there is a level of disappointment on his face. And I think it's more disappointment that just based on how this show likes to write characters, like my worry when it came to Trent knowing about Colin and my worry that Trent might out him without his say so, and then seeing how that really played out in Amsterdam where Trent himself is gay and it came out and they actually bonded over this situation. I would assume if I had to guess, I don't think this is a show that would necessarily take the time to make Isaac the homophobic guy that kind of gets over that. Maybe it will. Maybe we'll see that in the next episode. But it wasn't, in his reaction, didn't seem necessarily like that was going to be that was his reaction to it. If I had to guess, maybe being hopeful, that it's just him surprised that Colin wasn't open, right? That seems like more the vibe of this show, that just Isaac would be disappointed that Colin wouldn't feel comfortable being open about who he is, right? And maybe understanding why he wouldn't be open, considering professional athlete, a locker room full of dudes, who knows who isn't homophobic, So it's an interesting moment where, Colin's secret is out now, more so than Trent. Like Trent obviously would have kept it secret, wouldn't have told anybody, would have left it up to Colin to come out on his own terms if he ever felt like it. But now that Isaac knows, I would imagine the next episode is going to deal with that. Ever since we first found out about Colin, I have been waiting for the inevitability of the other players finding out, and it's slowly come out. So a lot of setup has been done in regards to Colin, and maybe next episode, hopefully, get that storyline tied up. See how everybody accepts him, everybody loves him, everybody's happy for him, right? Which is an inevitability. Maybe it goes the other way where there are players that have issues. Who knows? But generally the show tends to be very positive and accepting. So that whole situation, kind of hard to gauge. Cut to Keeley talking to Rebecca now about the video. And she tells her about, how this whole situation takes her back to when she was 15 and there was a topless photo of her that was passed around at school, right? Which is it's an interesting, first off, the way she said it, it seems like it was another student that passed around this photo, which in today, kids that share those types of photos on their phones, she could have been arrested for distributing child porn. Everybody involved who received it could be, charged with possession, distribution of child porn. Like it is, we're living in a time, especially with technology and phones, that it's like the ease at which those things can happen is far more accessible than back in the day when you had to get things developed. You had a Polaroid camera, maybe. But still, it's disgusting that her at 15 had to deal with that. And even more disgusting when you find out that that was a teacher. First off, that she sent this picture to the teacher, but then the teacher is the one that spread around, which is disturbing on the standpoint of the writers of the show, where not necessarily that disturbing, but considering the last episode where there was the joke about Jack being as rich as somebody who would be associated with Epstein, that kind of joke. And then there's this one where it's like an adult sharing an underage nude picture of a girl at a school. Disturbing. Right? And Keeley's fine with, as an adult, all of the topless photos that she has taken, the things that she consented to, that she was okay with, she's comfortable with those. But it's different when it's something that wasn't meant to be shared, when it was something that was meant to be personal and private, and for that to get out. And that's the same way this picture, when she was 15, it was meant to be private. It wasn't meant to be shared. So when that kind of specific use, specific purpose is altered, then it feels like it's it's insulting. It's not what was intended. And all she asks of Rebecca is to restructure society so that women aren't constantly sexualized, and then while also simultaneously being crucified for being sexual, right? Could you potentially restructure society so there's not this insane double standard, right? Which, of course, Rebecca is sympathetic to that. And Keeley's not sure how she should feel. Rebecca asks how Jack took it, and Keeley said that, she was lovely about it, but then she got this statement. And then Rebecca reads the statement and says, oh, this is some lawyer drew this up. This is all lawyer stuff who wrote this statement, right? And she also tells Keeley that the silver lining in all of this is that this video taught all the young women how to masturbate properly, which Rebecca had a long confusing situation when she learned with using furniture, right? So the silver lining, at least it's educational. And they're such good friends. The friendship between Keeley and Rebecca is amazing. One of the great aspects of the show. Cut to the French player still in the locker room, still deleting photos while everybody else is gone. Cut to Roy runs into Keeley as she leaves, and he apologizes for everything that's happening, right? But then he asks, they kind of ask how each other is. But then Roy asks who the video was made for. Absolutely wrong move. Absolutely wrong. He realizes it at the moment he asks it. She doesn't answer. This is none of his business. And she kind of leaves. Roy's like, I fucked up. And it sucks, right? The hope of her and Roy getting back together in that moment seems like it's less likely to happen, which is something that I was hoping for, because this relationship with Jack, especially after this episode, seems like it is destined to fail. Obviously, there's another person that is potentially in the running, as it were, as somebody for Keeley to get with. But Roy messed up big time. Cut to Jack coming home. Keeley's already at home watching TV. She's like making art out of, I don't know if it's beads or snacks on their coffee table, making these little pictures out of these little crumbs or beads. But Jack gets home. You find out that the statement was from a lawyer, right? Jack called her dad for advice on how to deal with this whole thing, and then her dad got the lawyers involved. Keeley brings up that, did you have to have Barbara give me the statement, right? Like, did you want Barbara because she's the most thoughtful and compassionate person? And of course, playing it off as a joke. And Keeley tells her she can't do the statement, right? And Jack seems cool with it. It's like, no problem, understandable. And Jack's just like, let's just forget about all this for tonight, right? And Keeley suggests, oh, you want to invite Barbara over to mess up our peaceful night? And so clearly not, like, clearly still good between the two of them. Cut to Ted reading a book to Henry. It's late. They're both kind of tired. Ted's reading this book to Henry, and he's like asking how things are going, trying to find out how Henry's life is going. Henry mentions that he has the most sky miles out of every kid in his class, and he's also starting a band with the kid, I think, that he bullied. I think is the kid that he's starting a band with, and Henry wants to play the drums. And then Ted kind of trying to get more intel on this whole Jacob thing. And tries to ask if Jake is around during TV time, right? Just trying to get more info, but Henry passes out, so Ted's not able to get any more information to try and see where this relationship is at with his ex and Jake. Cut to Nate waking up to an empty bed, but has a text message from Jade saying good morning to him, and Nate kind of hesitates. Like at first he's going to write, hey, babe, right? Kind of more casual. But instead he asks if she's hungry for breakfast. And she's like, thumbs up. So things are still kind of good with them, but still undefined. Cut to Jack waking up, to Keeley bringing her breakfast in bed. Keeley wearing a dress that she went out and purchased during her retail therapy, which if it's the morning, like what stores are open unless Jack was sleeping in? Maybe it's noon and Keeley went out when stores first opened. Either way, she bought this outfit. She's excited to wear it to this charity polo event. Finds out that Jack canceled the event, didn't think that she would want to deal with reporters or any of the press or anything like that, right? So they decide to stay in for the day. Cut to at the Lasso apartment, Ted's apartment. Beard is there making breakfast for Henry and Ted, right? No work. There's zero football that needs to be done, right? Ted can spend the whole day. Beard's going to hang out with him, hang out with Ted and Henry all day. They can do anything. Free day, right? Beard recommends an immersive Jack the Ripper walking tour, right, which they turned down despite the fact that it's 6 hours long. And at one point you get chased because it's immersive. They're not into it. Henry recommends that he wants to go to a soccer game. And Beard says that there's only one game playing, obviously West Ham. Beard says that he needs to stop by his apartment to get something first. Cut to them in the stands at West Ham watching the soccer game. Beard with his coaching attire on, his mirrored glasses and jumpsuit, right? Very angry looking, as obviously Nate is on the sideline, not facing away as he's coaching. But you see Henry, who's excited. Henry likes Nate, trying to get Nate's attention. You see that other coach turn around and tell Nate, there you got a fan up in the stands there. Nate turned around and Henry's like, "Look, I got your shirt." Big fan got a West Ham shirt on. Yeah, and Nate and Ted give, Henry and Nate and Ted give Nate a wave to say hello, and you see this like smile kind of go on Nate's face, that he's kind of happy that Ted is there, right? Still a little confused though as well, a little flustered, but it kind of, because he's like in the asshole Nate, he's in evil Nate mode while he's coaching, and to see Ted and Henry kind of shakes him out of this asshole trance that he's in, right? And he gets a little smile on his face. And Henry's super excited that Nate saw him, right? Henry, big fan of Nate. Cut to Jack and Keeley. They're out playing mini golf, and Keeley's wearing her outfit she bought for polo. And you see one of Jack's old school friends is there and comes over, and Jack introduces Keeley as her friend, right? And Keeley clearly notices that Jack refers to her as her friend. So, Jack's not completely open, especially now with this leak. It probably contributes to that as well. Let's take a quick break from this episode because I want to talk about, are you looking to add some unique and expressive artwork to your home, office, or wardrobe? Look no further than the Many Faces series by Ray Taylor. That's me. These abstract paintings on paper explore the endless possibilities of the human face, capturing unique expressions of emotion, mood, tone, and energy in just a few minimal features. Now you can bring these stunning and thought-provoking pieces into your own space with high-quality prints and t-shirts, featuring designs from the Many Faces series. Or take home a one-of-a-kind original piece for your collection. Don't miss out on this opportunity to add some original and expressive artwork to your home, office, or wardrobe. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com to browse and purchase original artworks, prints, and t-shirts from the Many Faces series today. And now, back to the show. After the win, cut back to Nate after the win. Right, he's going to his office, and he gets a text from Rupert apologizing for Ted being there, and says that it won't happen again. And at first, Nate was going to reply with like just kind of playing it off, like no big deal, right? But then he instead changes it to good, thank you, right? Because he has to be evil Nate for Rupert. That is the Nate Rupert wants, is evil Nate. So anytime Rupert is involved, Nate has to be evil Nate. But every other time we're seeing Nate as normal, awkward, sweet Nate. So you're seeing that kind of, he's only evil Nate when it applies to Rupert. And as soon as Rupert pushes him away, he has no reason to be evil Nate. So once that happens, it is just going to be perfect. Normal Nate going to Richmond. Everybody's happy. Redemption arc for Nate complete. Cut to Ted and Beard and Henry. They're all outside. They're at the pub sitting at an outside table. There's a busker playing, by the park. May comes out serving them beer. But she's not stoked about them going to their rival to watch the game, and not happy that Henry is wearing a West Ham shirt and almost, denies service to them. But of course, she ends up serving all of them. And then you have the busker playing a Beatles song, right? And Henry likes the Beatles because his dad likes the Beatles. Meanwhile, Ted gets a text from Rebecca. She says she has some info, right? She got some info that Ted is looking for. So Ted gets the call and kind of walks away so the music isn't interrupting his call. Meanwhile, Beard, still sitting with Henry, explains the meaning of the song Hey Jude that is being played to Henry, what the lyrics mean, right? That it was written for a boy who is sad about his parents getting a divorce, and that the song was meant to cheer the boy up. Very relatable to Henry. Potentially, although Henry doesn't seem like he is sad from his parents breaking up as much as Ted clearly is, but it's a very sweet moment where you see how sweet and good of a person Beard is, right? He tells him that it may feel like you're in a sad song at times, but you have the superpower to make it a happy one. And he does it just as the song Hey Jude changes into a happy song with the na 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 na, right? It goes from this kind of melancholy type of a song to this like happy, upbeat, cheering song. And perfect timing, obviously, for Beard to be telling this kid some great words of advice that, like, you can, this, like, things might be bad, but you can turn them into good, right? Meanwhile, Ted is sitting on a bench talking to Rebecca, and she's asking him why he never took his ex to Paris. And he's like, well, we had always had plans, but obviously life got in the way and we never got a chance to, right? So it's clear the reaction Ted had at the beginning of the episode when he finds out that they're going to Paris, that it was clearly something that he wanted to take her and experience with her. And we find out now that he never got the chance. So it's additionally clearly something that meant something to him, and that's why it's another reason why it's bothering Ted so much, right? Then Rebecca says that who gives a flying fuck if she's getting engaged, right? He just needs to focus on his time with his son and go back to that pub and sing Hey Jude with his son, right? Rebecca's able to break Ted away from this distraction and focus on this time that he, instead of spending this time with his son while he's in town, he is so focused and distracted on this thing that doesn't mean anything. If she's going to get proposed to, it's going to happen. Ted knowing about it isn't going to change anything other than probably ruin his mood, right? So he does. He goes over and they sing the song with the busker, Hey Jude. Great moment. Cut to Jake and Keeley. She tells Keeley that she has a toned down version of the statement for her to read. And Keeley thought her taking care, when Jack said she was going to take care, she thought that meant she was going to get it taken down. And of course, it's the internet, impossible to do. So obviously she wasn't able to take it down, right? Then Jack begs her, right, saying how it looks that a woman she's seeing who's running a business that she's funding has a porno online, which of course, wrong move, right? Keeley again refuses to apologize because it's not her fault, right? This is not a porno. This was something that was sent privately to somebody and it got leaked. It was not intended. And if it was intended, if she had been in a porno, she wouldn't care about it because she would have known the ramifications of her doing something that is public. This wasn't supposed to be public. It's not her fault. There's no reason for her to apologize for it. But of course, Jack is more concerned with how this affects her image, right? And Jack also asks, right? Keeley doesn't regret making the video or sending the video. She is just not happy with the fact that it got public. Jack asks if there's more videos, right? And Keeley's like, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. You know, she's probably made other ones. Probably not the only time she's ever sent a video to somebody she was dating. And Jack just decides to leave, right? Tells Keeley she doesn't know if she's going to come back, right? Which at this point I'm like, fuck Jack, right? She is clearly she only cares about how this situation impacts her. She no longer cares about Keeley in this situation. She clearly agrees with this statement where Keeley is for some reason taking responsibility and being sorry for having made this video, when it is at no point Keeley's responsibility. It wasn't her actions that made this video public. So I'm hoping this is the thing that breaks them up. Not that I didn't like I mean, this Jack has had so many red flags from the beginning, from the love bombing stuff, from her saying that she gets super jealous. Like there's been red flags. So hopefully this is the thing that you know allows Keeley to be with somebody that treats her right and cares, right? Cut to Nate and Jade at home after the game. Jade's pouring some wine for them to drink. And she asks if he wants to go out and celebrate their win. And he's like, I'm already on to the next one. Right? And she sits down next to him as he's looking at, of course, an article has a picture of Ted, Henry, and Beard in the stands, you know. And she tells him that he needs to enjoy his victories. Right? And she sees on the laptop the news article, the picture of Ted and Beard and Henry. And she tells Nate, it looks like they were celebrating your victory. And Nate kind of gets a smile on his face. He's like, oh, it's right. You know, it's like, maybe I should. It's like Ted clearly is happy for Nate. And Nate understands this. And the other aspect of Jade that I was excited for, the other thing that I noticed, if she was going to get in a relationship with Nate, that she would be integral with him getting back in Richmond, pointing out that Ted celebrates Nate's wins, right? Ted was there to celebrate Nate's wins, and he should celebrate his own wins, right? And he has a smile on his face. The thought of Ted celebrating his victory, Jade noticing it. And then she tells him that she loves his smile. And this moment is what got me choked up. Thinking about, I love Nate, and I sympathize with Nate so much. Not necessarily when he's evil Nate, but it's like his awkward, this uncertainty of what the relationship he's in, what that means. And when she says that she loves his smile, when she says that he should celebrate his wins, and pointing out that Ted celebrates these wins, his wins, these are all good messages for Nate, right? Right? Everything that Nate has gotten positively was from being himself, right? His opportunity to coach with Ted was being himself, having these ideas, being himself. And Ted gave him the opportunity. His being in a relationship with Jade because he was himself when he asked her out. He wasn't evil Nate. The only person that likes evil Nate in this entire show is Rupert, which makes complete sense because that's the type of guy Rupert is. And Rupert only likes Nate when Nate is not only evil Nate, but also winning evil Nate. And then she says she likes to see her boyfriend happy. So it's like, it's this moment where it's like this weight has been lifted off Nate, where he understands, knows where she stands in this relationship. And she's got his best. She wants the best for him, and she wants him to realize what's best for him. And this is the moment that got me all choked up. Like, I love this moment so much because I do love Nate. I do love Nate, right? And I'm excited for his redemption arc. The thing that was so great about last season is that they saw the creation of evil Nate and how horrible it was to see him become evil Nate. And that's one of the reasons why I had the hope, because I do love Nate, that he has this redemption arc, that he becomes good Nate, becomes who he is. And that's what we're seeing. And I absolutely love it. I got very emotional watching that. Got choked up. Because I think she's so good for him. Cut to Keeley alone in her bed, right? Seemingly next morning. And there's a knock at the door. She goes. It's Jamie Tart at the door, wearing all white, looking very angelic, right? And he wasn't sure if he should text her, but he wanted to come and check up on her, see how she's doing, right? And it's so, in addition to Nate's journey in this show, Jamie Tart has had an insane arc, going from the person he was to the person he is so different. Like, I don't know real life human beings that have had this kind of transformation. Right? And he apologizes, and it's at this moment we realize that it was him that she sent the video to. And he's like, I deleted everything, but I forgot about the emails. And she points out that, like, I hope your password wasn't password. And he's like, well, I thought the 2 S's would throw people off because he thinks password is spelled with 1 S. But, of course, it's spelled with 2. Typical Jamie Tart. Just because he's a good guy now doesn't mean he's not still stupid on some level. Has a level of ignorance. The lovable dumb guy that Jamie Tart is. But at least he's, like, such a good person now. And he apologizes, and she gives him a big hug and thanks him. It's a great moment. So hopefully, like, that's one, like, definitely at the beginning of the season, I wanted Keeley to get back with Roy, but I could easily see her getting back with Jamie, because he has, like, what never happens in reality when people go back with an ex is that there's this idea that the person has changed. And usually people don't change. Jamie has really changed. He's not just, like, pretending to have changed. He is really very thoughtful about his actions and what he says and what he does. So I could see her getting back with him and that being a good ending for her. Still feel bad for Roy, but still, I could see I wouldn't be disappointed. Cut to Ted, right? His ex back from Paris, picking up Henry, and Henry let slip that Ted was gonna buy him a drum kit. And as Ted hands her Henry's backpack, he holds on to it so he can examine her hand to see if there's a ring. There's no ring. She says Paris was just all right. And as she leaves, they file into the black cab outside. Ted looks out his window, right, to see Henry not give a fist bump to Jacob, who was standing there all excited to give him a fist bump. Henry just completely ices him as he jumps into the cab. And then when his ex goes to get into the cab, she looks back at his apartment, and both of them are surprised because she was not expecting to see him standing in the window watching them leave. And he wasn't expecting to see her turn around to give him one last look. Ted looks a bit confused at this whole thing, closes the blinds like, oh, I don't know what this means, right? Closes the blinds. It didn't go well. He's like, so it's like there's this little window of, like, maybe Ted will get back with his ex. Maybe this thing with Jacob, she realizes. And throughout this episode, we've also seen how she is so much like Ted. They have such similar trains of thought. The things that she says, they say similar things. They seem like you understand why they were together in this episode. You understand the connection they had. So kind of an interesting end to that, right? And you saw before he left, Henry was doing something to the Lego arena. We never get to see it, but I hope he doesn't change the prophecy. I hope he didn't change anything, but I still believe the prophecy of the Lego stadium will be fulfilled by the end of this season. Great episode. That was how the episode ends. We have Keeley and Jack most likely over. And I wouldn't be surprised if this ends the PR business, sending her back to Richmond, which would only confirm my prediction. So that is why I wouldn't be surprised. And I don't know if she will get back with Jamie necessarily, but it did definitely highlight how immense of a change and growth he has had over the 3 seasons. Also, Roy in this episode didn't do himself any favors, so I think he is... I have less hope that they will get back together. You have Nate and Jade. Their relationship's going well. Nate, she's like, it's going to be the big reason why he smooths things over with Ted. Would not be surprised. She's also the reason he goes back to Richmond. Especially, like, she hasn't seen evil Nate yet. So, it's going to be interesting. Maybe she sees evil Nate and she's like, you need to stop doing that. And it's going to happen. Something's going to happen involving that. And Nate's missing the Diamond Dogs. He got a smile when he saw Ted at his game, right? Jade pointing out that Ted was there celebrating his win. I'm still 100%. He's going back to Richmond. Like, we just need Rupert to reject him. He needs to reunite with Ted. Rupert needs to reject him, and then it'll happen. The whole Colin secret is out. Isaac knows. We'll see how he really is kind of a neutral reaction to the whole thing. So I'm hoping for the best possible outcome with that. I hope, maybe it will be this, thing where he's homophobic and he gets over it. Who knows? I don't think that's what the show's going to do. There are a few moments where we saw kind of the similarities that Ted has with his ex. Like they're very similar thought processes. Right? They share a lot of the same trains of thoughts. We also have Beard showing himself to be a great guy, as we already knew Beard was, giving Henry some words of encouragement. So great episode all in all. Next episode, season 3, episode 9, Le Locker Room aux Folles, which I don't know what that means in French. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. But the next episode, Colin and Isaac's friendship is tested. I think maybe it might be he's homophobic. But at least, thankfully, we're going to get some resolution. Seems like next episode, boom, we're going to get some resolution with that whole thing. Isaac most likely going to get over it. Sure. Roy is asked to do a press conference. So maybe there will be something in that. Who knows? It'd be interesting. I'm excited. Only a few episodes left in this season. Only a few episodes left in the entire series of Ted Lasso, a show that I love, and it seems like every episode gets me choked up for one reason or another. But that is a wrap for this, another episode, incredible episode of the Ted Lasso Recap Podcast. Y'all have been tuning in, and I couldn't be more grateful. If you're loving what I'm doing here, please consider subscribing and leaving a review. I want to make sure I'm hitting the bullseye every time I step up to the mic. Now, I know y'all have opinions, and I want to hear them. Reach out on social media at Ray Taylor Show on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, and let me know what y'all are thinking. I promise to read every message with the same enthusiasm as Ted coaching his team to victory. And finally, I can't wait to get back with y'all next week for another deep dive into the world of Ted Lasso. So until then, stay curious, stay kind, and stay gold, folks.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.